So we'll get started today. If anybody has questions, feel free to interrupt. So the first thing we always do is try to give you guys an insight to what we believe is your real self. That underlying consciousness that lies below and above thinking. So your thought stream that most people have totally self-identify with, your ego, your job, your gender, your worries, your bills you have to pay next month. Literally, if I say pink elephant and a pink elephant runs through your head, that thought stream most people think is them. But you have a much deeper capacity to be the consciousness which those thoughts float through like clouds. And if you watch your thoughts, they'll crest and they'll die and they'll become new thoughts, just like wind blowing across an ocean. You know, all the waves are the disruption, but if you were to stand on a hill calmly and look at that, you would know that they were all part of something deeper. That deeper consciousness is you, and you can find peace in life by sinking below the turbulent waves, because there's always stillness at the bottom of the ocean. So what we do at the beginning of each one is, we ring this bell, and just try to observe when the sound stops, crests, and dies. So, long story short, it's not the longest sounding bell. Some of your thoughts are quicker, some of them are longer. You can hear these sounds, you can hear the sound of my voice. But just like sounds that start and have a life and die, so do thoughts. Thoughts we often consider as real, absolute, urgent. As we've discussed before, you'll be watching a movie and you'll be crying, even though you know that the actors have a better life than all of us. Because our mind, when it believes, when it's stuck in this thought stream, it can give you physiological reactions, chemicals are being released in your brain. And so, until you learn to control your thoughts, you can never learn to be spiritual and happy. So, what is the true nature of reality? Here, we don't have a dogma. Anybody can throw out anything. But our running guess is this, is that what lives in me, my observing consciousness, and it's very tough to describe because it transcends words. So everything I give you guys is a signpost. You'll never leave here with enough knowledge to find this unless you search in yourself. Everything is contained within oneself. So, before we even get there, because it transcends words, just breathe deep into your stomach, slowly out of your nose, a couple times, keep breathing like that, and just pause for 60 seconds, clear your mind, then try to watch a thought arise. Live in your mind and die like a cloud floating across the sky. If you can't come up with a thought, just listen to the background noise. Just observe your own mind. Now, I wish we could go further with that and go way longer. That's what deep meditation's for. But, just so you know, you're more spiritually evolved than 95% of people now. Because what you've experienced is to be an observing mind. You've actually witnessed that there's a you that's separate from your thoughts. You can hear sounds float across your mind, thoughts float across your mind, and the more space and presence that you have between your thoughts and your ego, the more peace and joy will enter your life. That fundamental ability to observe conscious thoughts lives in all of us. So while we may look different, have different jobs, have different lovers, have different friends, have different stories we tell each other, different egos we've created, what's fundamental about all of us is that observing mind that can watch those thoughts, the presence that's here throughout our whole entire life. That presence was with you when you were 3, though your husband or wife probably wasn't. That presence was with you when you were 8, even though your concept that you're a doctor or a lawyer or whatever your job is wasn't. That presence was with you when you're 15. It'll be with you when you're 70. That ability to observe thoughts is what we truly are. and it will be with you forever, and it lives, that divine spark in all of us. All those other things, those thoughts, they're just creations. Just like when I say pink elephant, or don't think about a lemon, and how it's yellow, and how it would feel in your skin, and how you would bite into it, and how it would make your mouth water. And you think about a lemon anyways most of the time. Your thoughts are just completely turbulent. They're just going to rush through your mind and bubble up out of nowhere, your subconscious mind, and you're going to be a victim of them. Unless you realize that you're something much deeper. And we've evolved to have 80% of our thoughts be negative, unfortunately. Because we've evolved in the jungles when we weren't apex predators. And evolution hasn't caught up yet. So we were constantly worried about being eaten by animals, starving to death. Those concerns no longer plague us in modern society. But evolution hasn't caught up. So science has actually proven 80% of our thoughts are negative. So if you totally identify with the thoughts in your head that you don't have control over, you're going to have a pretty negative perception. And as we've seen from crying at the movies, instead of crying, you're going to be releasing cortisol, stress hormone, silent killer, the plague that's going to kill modern society. That hormone is what's released, basically the same chemical compounds released when a gazelle is half torn apart and running across the savannah from a lion. And we're sitting here experiencing that in a traffic jam, thinking about paying our mortgage, constantly just dripping into our body, causing all kinds of chaos. So if you can't get control of that, you can never be happy and at peace. And where does peace come from? Does peace come from the perfect lover, the perfect friends, the perfect circumstance, the perfect job? Because that's what your thoughts tell you, because they were born in evolution. And all that evolution cared about was pass on your genes. If you have more money and resources, you'll pass on your genes. If you're physically stronger, you'll pass on your genes. Just anything more. The more you had, the more likely you were to survive physically. That's all your body cared about. It didn't care about being at peace. And so that lie is fundamentally built into the substructure of your thinking mind. I need more to be happy. But think about it. Think about your own life and use your logic and reason. Does more really make you happy? You know, did that new job really make you happy? I mean, science has actually looked at this, so we don't have to conjecture. They've actually done a 1-year follow-up of people who have won the lotto, which most people think would be the greatest thing in your life. And 1 year later, people who have become paraplegic, what most people would think would be one of the most terrible things that could happen to you. If those people before rated themselves at a 7 out of 10 on the happiness scale, 1 year from now, they also rate themselves as a 7. There is a little bump right when you win the lottery, and there's definitely a little decrease when something terrible happens to you. But just like you have an immune system that clears out the viruses in your body and kills them off, you have a psychological immune system. And what it does is it readjusts you to your current level. And why is that? It's because it doesn't want you to win and then never keep winning. It wants you to keep pushing. So it's almost like a treadmill. Every time you get something, you're gonna want more and more and more, because your body's gonna reset. This is my new standard. I want more. I want more. And so that being said, that doesn't mean you can't achieve in real life. It means that you have to use consciousness and thinking as a tool for achieving things. But while you're doing that, you have to be present in the moment, because you're always enough. You're just like you can cry during a movie when you're sitting in the comfort of your house and those actors are safe. You can create sadness in your own body through your mind. You can do that in every aspect of life. You can create sadness or happiness. You can release those chemicals that physical, external things tell you to release by controlling your own mind. And if you can't become friends with the present moment and be happy, as Eckhart Tolle tells us, you'll never be happy, because if you're worried about the past, you're doing it in a present moment. If you're worried about the future, you're worrying in a present moment. And you're telling yourself that lie that, well, when I get this, XXX, I'll be happy. I'll let myself be happy. I'll be complete. And then when you get to that moment, you're just in a present moment again. But you've trained yourself your whole life to want more. So now, instead of wanting the perfect lover, you just need the perfect job, and then you'll be happy in a year. Or you just need to lose 10 pounds. Or you just need this. And the thing is, all those moments of life have passed away. Because if you're eating dinner and thinking about paying your bills, you're not really present eating dinner. You're thinking. That'd be like going to a movie, trying to enjoy it, but somebody's playing a radio in front of you. That radio is your thoughts. It's stealing your life. It's stealing every moment of your life because you're not fully immersed in it. Because it's just complete worry, thinking, instead of existing. All for the crazy delusional lie that if I just worry enough, I'll somehow worry myself into a position where I'll be complete, and then I can exist. But acceptance is the true path to happiness. Now, that fundamental underlying consciousness that's in all of us, where did it come from? The Big Bang, science tells us, happened. It was everything in the universe, all matter, all energy, everything we know, was condensed into one tiny spot. And when the Big Bang happened, it created every element, all of us. The chairs we're sitting on, me, my vocal cords that are speaking, your ears that are receiving, we all came from this one singularity point. And so this one divided to become many. So it could hear itself speak, so it could play games, so it could have forms, and so it can enjoy itself and enjoy life. But never lose sight that the form, just like thought forms, are a game. Just like when you play chess, checkers, cards, you don't play without rules. You want there to be a winner and a loser because it's exciting. Our divine consciousness split into forms so we could be excited. So we could enjoy what it's like to lose and what it's like to win. And a lot of things we think are evil in life or that are unbearable in life are actually just another part of our divine aspect that we're not identifying with. It's their time to win. It's our time to lose and experience that. It's the concept of yin and yang. Every tallness has shortness. Every heat has cold. Every good has bad. And just like you have to learn the way of the Tao to be happy, you have to have a balanced center to you, irregardless of the circumstances. Acceptance doesn't mean that you can't keep pushing forward, but it means that in this moment, you accept perfection. And because you realize that there's no other way it could be, that the universe is fine-tuned, and that the things you think are evil aren't. You find yourself here and you think that you're a finite being, but you're an infinite being. So you think death is the ultimate evil, but really it's just a transition into a new form. Who says that? Me, a guy in weird glasses, or the first law of thermodynamics, science? Matter can never be created or destroyed, it only changes form. What is science? Science is observing things. Do an experiment, observing. Do an experiment, observing. What have we always observed? Endless time. We've never seen time stop. So why do we think that time ever stops? Time is eternal. We have no scientific empirical evidence that time will have an end. And so time is just constantly progressing. But if you're matter and energy, you can never be created or destroyed. You can only change shape. Just like an ice cube melts, goes back in, rains down, turns into ice in the winter. Just the seasons, spring, winter, fall. And you have to learn those seasons. You have to become intimate with the rhythm of life. You have to enjoy, and you have to trust the universe, knowing that you can enjoy this form. If it's ever too overburdensome, you can take those deep breaths and you can go into the observing mind. And you can find a deep sense of peace and joy and fulfillment, because that's your divine aspect, under your thinking mind. However, some that are Christian may find the Big Bang, science, a little iffy. But let's see what Jesus said in his own words. In the Gospel of Thomas, section 3, Jesus said, "If your leaders say to you, 'Look, the kingdom is in heaven,' then the birds of heaven will proceedeth you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will proceedeth you. Rather, the kingdom is inside you, and it is outside of you." And how does that apply to the Big Bang? It was basically God saying, don't look to the clouds. Look inside of you. That divine spark lives there. Under your thinking mind, it's there. But because the Big Bang, which we all came from the same thing, was also all forms in life, it exists outside of you. There's a divine aspect within you, under your thinking mind, and in everybody else around you. And when you start to hate people, when you start to not enjoy people, you can always remember this ego construction that you don't like of them, you do have the same divine spark of consciousness. We all came from the same place. We all have an observing mind. The ego is what you don't like. But how many of us like our own ego? If you really think about that, addictions, the smoking, drugs, cigarettes, lust, all kinds of addictions, all of these pain bodies that have arose in our ego that our mind attaches to, all of these terrible things that exist in ourselves. How many people have never let themselves down? And so if you can understand that nobody should love you more than you love yourself, and you can be disappointed in your own ego construction, can't you forgive your neighbor just a little bit more that their ego construction is incorrect? And understand that it comes from ignorance, not necessarily spite, because if they understood their true divine aspect, they wouldn't be so tied up in this ego construction. And the further we step away from our own, we can connect with other people on their divine level. All your relationships will get better. And when you're talking to somebody, instead of thinking about what you're going to say, you'll actually be a space and a presence for them to exist, for their inner being to express themselves. When you're eating dinner with somebody, you'll actually be there with them, feeling the room, feeling what it's like to be in a chair, hearing everything, enjoying the conversation, enjoying the candles. You won't be 2 days from now thinking about your deadline. And not only will you have a better experience in life, people will actually start to feel this deeper connection because you're actually there instead of never present. And Jesus said, when you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you are the children of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you dwell in poverty, and you are poverty. If you don't know your true divine aspect, the ability to be present and to be a space for life to happen in, then you'll live in complete poverty, because the ego is poverty. The ego is constructed by evolution to always be lacking. It's in the substructure of the ego can never be complete. So if you exist in that thought stream, the thought stream will always tell you, you're not pretty enough, you're not rich enough, you're not as good as this person. And so until you actually know yourself, you'll live in poverty. So now Jesus says, blessings on the lion that the human will eat, so that the lion becomes human. And cursed is the human that the lion will eat, and the lion will become human. What does that mean? Not just our psychological substructure and ego, but our attachment to our bodies. Every 7 to 10 years, as we've stated before, every piece of your body, every cell, has already died and been extracted through sweat, through whatever, a lot of grosser processes, except for very few tiny, really hard bones. And all of those, all that material and matter had been rearranged into everybody else. So you've experienced physical death once, twice, depending on your age, 3, 4 times already. But you still fear physical death. And how did you replace that matter? For example, when you ate the lion, it became human. That matter in it now had the ability to experience this heightened consciousness that we have. So, think about that. You fear what it's going to be like to die, but you've already physically died many times. You fear what it's like to mentally change, but you've already mentally changed many times. You probably don't have memories from 3 years old or 7 years old. Even memories from 2 weeks ago, on this very day. What do you really remember from that day? 5 minutes of it? You have constructions, words that we tell each other that are true. You painted a picture that day, but you don't have the true experiences of what that day was like. Now, what does science say about the Big Bang and why there's a religious aspect to it? There's some people that say that it's even more than this, but one scientist says there's 1 in a quintillion chance that life could have happened from the Big Bang. Why is that so? Because there's fundamental constants in the universe. Gravity, strong and weak nuclear forces. These things never change. The speed of light never changes. All of these things had to be perfectly aligned for life to come into existence. If one of them was off, life would have never formed. So 1 in a quintillionth is like every grain of sand on Earth had to line up perfectly. If one piece was out of there, life wouldn't have formed. So now, when things are that improbable, you seem to think that intelligence designed those things. And here's an example like Mount Rushmore. You know, imagine the 4 presidents' face, and then you see some random stones over here that are uncarved in the mountain. If you randomly walked up to that mountain and you've seen the faces, you would see the design and say, you know what, somebody intentionally did that compared to the rest of the mountain. Even if you were from a foreign country and you didn't recognize the presidents, when you see intelligent structures, we are naturally as humans trained to recognize design. So, for example, not to get too scientific about it, positive and negative contributions to the cosmological constant cancel to 120-digit accuracy, yet fail to cancel beginning at 121st digit. So you know how you see like a dollar like 1.00? Imagine going 120 degrees of accuracy. That's how accurate just this one constant is. Now imagine all those other constants. And then unlike evolution, which is a biological process that can repeatedly try, these are fundamental forces. There was one Big Bang. So if any of these were off, they wouldn't have existed. This observation matched a Nobel Prize winner who said that if it wasn't this exact number, the universe would either have been too dispersed for stars and galaxies to have formed, or it would have recollapsed in on itself. So you have to ask yourself, when you're dealing with those numbers, if you were to walk in the desert, you're just walking in the desert, and then you come to a place and it's got a door, and there's a sign that says, hey, there's a key in this box. You take the key out, it opens the locked door. You go there, there's an elevator. It takes you to the room with another key. You open it. You're hot, there's an air conditioning system. You press it. It creates a perfect climate for you. You open the fridge and there's food in there, so you can eat. You get thirsty. You open another little fridge, and there's things to drink. Would you just think that all of those things appeared naturally? What science is showing is that absolute improbability that the universe could have existed with life in it, with that Big Bang, to a 1 in quintillion chance, yet life exists. There's 100 that I could do. We're carbon-based organisms, and if it was 4% off, none of the carbon would have existed. And there's just constants after constants that go there to make the equation just impossible. But again, don't take my word for it. This is a physicist, and he said, a physicist and an astronomer. Astronomers who do not draw theistic or deistic conclusions are becoming rare. And even the few dissenters hint that the tide is against them. Gregory Bergstrom of the University of California at San Diego complains that his fellow astronomers are rushing off to join the First Church of Christ of the Big Bang. So I've got just repeated quotes here from scientists, which I won't burden you guys with, about how improbable it is that life could have formed. And so, you know, I would just leave you guys with this because I'm trying to keep it short today. Normally we'll get back to our anxiety work we were doing, but I wanted to kind of touch on some of these things. That, again, when you're thirsty, literally, rain falls from the sky, you can open your mouth and you can drink. When you're hungry, you can walk and eat plants. You can eat other animals. Literally, the universe has never let you starve to death. Not to get, like, super up in your family's business, but even you, if you wonder if you're blessed, a sperm cell has a 1 in 250 millionth of a chance of being the lucky sperm cell. Now, keep in mind, that's not just you. That's every ancestor you've had, even non-human ancestors, back to the trace of time. So, you were born out of an improbable universe. You were born out of organic improbability. And yet you're born into an environment where we take these miracles of life for granted. When you want to breathe, you open your mouth and oxygen floods your lungs. And we take it for granted that oxygen exists. It doesn't have to. It could be anything. On many other planets all across the universe, there's places where there's not oxygen. Even here on Earth. You know, if you're born in the bottom of the sea, you would just open your mouth and you would drown. So all of these things are perfectly fitted. And evolution has perfectly fitted you to exist in this environment too. Now, you got to get control of the mental thing, but the rest is, a lot of that's a lie. If you weren't perfectly fitted for this environment, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have survived. All of your ancestors wouldn't have survived. So these conceptions and these lies we tell ourselves in our heads and these worries don't match reality. When you drop down to that lower level, yet higher level of existence, of becoming an observing mind, and you really feel, okay, I'm worried, but what is this moment like? And you'll realize that your resources can always match the present moment, and that it's always way easier than you think. So, that's it for today, guys. If anybody has any questions, just ask me after. Thanks so much.